Also, the tagline of this game is, you know, anybody can be saved, but you can't save everybody. I love that even on the first ending we got where we didn't go across, Margaret still died. So it's like, yeah, there is no storyline where everybody lives. Good times. My eyes slowly blink open and readjust to the brightness, what little there is. The sun is obscured by a thick layer of fog, making it impossible to estimate the time of day. I prop up my elbows and push myself up. The ground is hard and rocky, but that isn't the only reason I'm eager to get on my feet. I check my surroundings. The harsh, craggy earth of the island is interlaced with twisting vines and gnarled branches. Beside me, Bemele and Margaret are still fast asleep. The guide, however, is nowhere to be seen. I realize I don't recall seeing him lay down with everyone. It's likely he left us hours ago. There is a creeping silence here. I can't help but shudder at the hollow, aching feeling inside of me. It refuses to relent. I shift my weight back and forth, unsure of what to do with myself. Memories of last night's harrowing journey flicker through my mind. Bemele wakes suddenly, rising with alarm and startling Margaret awake as well. My mouth opens, then shuts, and after a moment of fumbling, a word finally escapes.
Hello.
Ha! Bemele gives me a gentle smile and makes his way over to me. Margaret follows suit.
Morning.
Is it even morning anymore?
Margaret tries to speak lightheartedly, however it doesn't do much to improve the mood. First mistake I've seen, but that's a very common comma splice error. People treat, however, as if it were a coordinating conjunction, when it is actually a subordinating conjunction. You would need to have a semicolon to make that correct. Grammar nerd! A pocket of quiet descends over us.
We should eat something soon. Margaret, do you have enough supplies?
Yes, I think I'll be alright with what I have.
That's a relief. The two of us have plenty of rations, though, so if you need anything, you can always ask.
She sighs and presses her fingers to her temples, acting as if she's fed up with us.
You know, the two of you need to stop looking out for everyone else so much.
Bemele winces at the statement without vocalizing what's on his mind. Margaret and I share a glance. This is about the person we left behind yesterday, the person we didn't help.
I'm sorry, I didn't intend.
It's not your fault.
But we didn't try to help that person. It goes quiet between us once more. The distinct rustling of the leaves around catches my attention. The guide appears, emerging from the thicket. Margaret appears to be a little uncomfortable at his return. Bemele glares at him as he makes his way over.
Nixie will not tread on land in daylight. However, being near the shoreline is still dangerous. If you leave the center of the island, remain cautious. Before the sun sets, I will be in this area. It would be wise to meet me here before nightfall.
Why did we have to leave him behind?
I sharply turn towards Bemele as he snarls and confronts the guide.
If you would just let him follow behind us, he would be alive.
The guide looks away, seemingly unaffected.
If all you're going to do is leave everyone to be lost, then why bother guiding us at all?
Despite Bemele's severe words, the guide apparently considers his piece here finished. He turns toward the forested area from which he came.
Wait!
Bemele calls out to the guide, reaching toward him. Before he can make contact, I quickly place a hand on his shoulder. He lowers his arm to his side, though I can still feel wrath emanating from him. We stay this way until the guide disappears from view. Dude, okay. Assuming the guide is a normal dude, which I am not convinced, but assuming he's a normal dude, and people frequently die on this path across, he's probably gonna get kind of cold-hearted and utilitarian about it at some point. You know, he helps and saves what people he can, but cannot get attached to people who he can't help, because otherwise it would just drive you nuts. Bemele begins to kick at the ground, spraying tiny pieces of gravel about.
Bemele, I know you're angry, but regardless of our feelings, we need the guide. If he leaves us, we'll all die.
And we've done so well with him.
I mean, we're all alive. I give him a cold glance. We won't even know which bridge to take without the guide. Bemele knows that. This needs to stop. There are people counting on us to make it back, and what of Margaret?
We can't afford to lose our way.
The anger etched into his expression fades into sadness.
You're right, Kika. You're right.
He weakly swats his hand in front of his face, as if he is trying to shoo away his racing thoughts. See, here's the thing. Because the game introduced that redheaded guy, who's almost certainly now dead, I now have a little bit of hope that maybe our little band of Bemele, myself, and Margaret can get across the bridge, because someone else has died. But that might be a false hope. But that's very, smart of the game to kind of introduce that tension of maybe I can make this work.
I can't stay here right now.
I nod, allowing him to leave alone. Beside me, Margaret releases a sigh.
Are you alright?
No, I'm not. Nothing is all right. And it will never get any better.
Margaret sucks in a breath as she starts to get emotional. Before it can spill out of her, she turns on her heels and walks off in a direction different than the guide's. Quietly, I speak. I'll speak with the guide. I ball my hands into fists, steel my will, and start advancing in the direction the guide went. I push my way through the branches and reach the other shore of the island. I look for the guide, but he's nowhere in sight. How? Where could he have gone? I search the area without success. The island is not in any way large. If I have not found him, it can only be because he does not wish to be found. I sigh as all motivation leaves me. I think I simply need to be alone. It seems as though my wish to be alone will be granted. There's no sign that they will be returning. A cold chill somehow whips its way down my back, despite the calm of the air. I keep my gaze on the dark ground, taking a breath so deep it stings the back of my throat. As I steadily empty my lungs, I try to empty my mind of all thoughts. I do not know what I'm doing anymore. Nothing is straightforward. I find something familiar and powerful in my thoughts and latch on. The mission. I have to try and focus on the mission. I need to be strong. My eyes dart back up. Is someone watching? I wonder if I'm afraid of being seen struggling like this, or if I hope I may not be on my own here. It doesn't matter. There's still nothing but the silent island. Time seems so indefinite around me, passing slowly. On this island, it almost seems to move slow as a stagnant pond. I shake my head, burying the thought. It's irrational, but I cannot bear to think of even old pond water. Gradually, my consciousness begins to include the world again. I do a few standard warm-up stretches, testing my mind and body. I don't know how long it's been, but I feel I have regained enough of my wits to continue on. I need to make sure everything is all right. Okay, so I rested again. I head through the wooded part of the island. There isn't anything that could be called a path, but I managed to pick my way through the bush quite well. Through a thinner stand of trees, I briefly catch sight of the guide standing on one of the beaches. He seems fine, but even though I'm sure he has turned his head towards me, he makes no show of acknowledging me. I continue my check without heeding that. After moving on, I find Bemele in a jagged clearing, leaning against a tree. He's already noticed me and is looking my way, smiling. As I get closer, I can pick up on the sadness behind his jovial expression.
How are you faring? Any problems?
Everything is fine. I came to check on you.
How kind. I've calmed down since then.
I'm glad to hear that. Is there any way I can help or anything you'd like to say?
He raises an eyebrow at that, his grin becoming markedly
I
playful.
didn't expect to see you so worried about me, Kika.
I have to force myself not to avert my eyes at that comment, embarrassment flowing into me. Bemele notices my reaction. He does not draw attention to it, however. Instead, he throws his arms out wide with a sour expression.
Have you seen the guide?
Bemele is clearly asking out of a sense of obligation, and makes no secret that he's not pleased to be discussing the guide. I nod in
I
response.
saw him earlier. He is the same as always.
Good, good. In that case, I'm going to stretch my legs for a bit. I feel stiff from standing in one place for so long.
I bid him a brief goodbye. Bemele waves as he departs. When I step into another clearing, I notice Margaret, sitting quietly at the base of a tree. Margaret begrudgingly lifts her head when I approach, enabling me to see that her face is damp and tear-stained, while her eyes are red and puffy. She has been crying. I shift uncomfortably on my feet.
Has something happened?
Everything is fine. I came to check on you.
Well, that's nice.
She speaks somewhat curtly, but at least she no longer seems as depressed.
I'm happy to report that everything's in order on this front.
I'm glad.
Of course, I cannot fully believe that. Margaret isn't saying what is actually on her mind, but I have no way to truly reach her.
Is that everything?
I suppose it is.
My words come out slowly and hesitantly, as though she might change her mind if I bide my time. I want to do more, but I cannot think of what else I can do for her.
Then goodbye.
If you need anything, I will be close by.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure I'll see you soon.
The response is sincere. It's enough to ease some of the worry. I smile, though weakly. With nothing else to say, I take my leave. I find that I've been pacing back and forth for quite some time. I finished my check a while ago, so now I have nothing left to do but aimlessly wander. I'm overcome with restlessness. This island may be safer than the bridges, but that is far from enough to ease the mind. I quietly sigh and decide to wait on my own. If I go back now, whoever I encounter will know that I don't want to be alone. That is more troubling than simply staying where I am. I sit down and silently listen to the ambiance of the island as I wait for time to pass. I can only hope that this will all end before I can no longer keep myself together. The sun begins to descend in the sky, and the light starts to fade into the fog. I feel relieved that it is almost time to leave this island. A chill slips down my spine at the thought of what comes next, however. Bemele and Margaret soon arrive. Upon seeing me, she tries her best to greet me, though it's clear she's not doing well. Bemele gives me a half smile as he waves.
Hello, Pika.
Hello there.
I wave back at them and walk over. I'm glad they are here. I don't want to be alone any longer.
Hello.
The atmosphere grows tense as the quiet stretches on. Margaret shifts around. Bemele seems torn between saying something and keeping the silence. Before too long, the guide arrives. His presence snuffs out all chance of conversing definitively. I keep my focus on steadying my breathing, bracing myself for what's ahead. All of us wait in an uncomfortable silence until night falls. We silently stand as one, forming a vigil of sorts. Our remaining lanterns illuminate the dark, prepared for tonight's journey. And yet, the way forward does not appear. The bridges have not risen from the depths. I glance to my side. The guide doesn't look at all pleased. The corners of his mouth have a harsh bent as he briefly loses himself to heavy thoughts.
We must go to the shore.
He doesn't offer an explanation for why. Instead, he goes on without us. I follow after the guide, my forehead creasing with swelling worry. Behind me, I hear Bemele and Margaret's unsure footsteps. The four of us press onto the shore. The dark waters lap at the edges of the sand, and as expected, the maze is still hidden beneath the surface. The guide grips his staff tighter still, his knuckles turning ghostly white. He sucks in a breath of air, like he's about to speak, but he hesitates. We all stare at him expectantly. After a moment more, the guide is fed up with waiting.
Bridges are late. If they don't arrive as soon as darkness falls, there's no telling exactly how long it will be before they do.
Bemele's face immediately sours, and he isn't able to stay silent about his feelings.
So we're going to waste our time standing idly by. There's hardly enough time to make the trip as it is.
Complaining won't make these bridges come any sooner, though I sympathize with your frustrations. The wait had already been tense as it was. Not knowing how much longer it will last makes it that much more dreadful.
Time is by far the least of our worries. On the bridges we are constantly moving, which makes it easier to avoid the prowlers. However, this island does not offer that luxury. We're trapped here.
My body goes rigid as his words sink in.
More importantly, the bridges are raised above the waters. Nixie have difficulties pulling themselves up onto the bridges. The soft sloping of the shore will allow far more prowlers to drag themselves towards us. Not all will be as dangerous as the ones we've encountered thus far. However, we could easily be overwhelmed.
The pit forms deep in my stomach. I stare at him, aghast. I had no idea the situation was that dire. Why didn't we just go around? I glance from the waterline to the trees. What I'm looking for, I don't know. A sign of what might be to come, perhaps.
I wonder if those fires had anything to do with this.
Bemele's words are biting as he wonders aloud. The guide answers Bemele firmly, wanting to put an end to his speculation.
No. Whatever magic controlling the bridges is inconsistent. Humans haven't found a way to impact it. We can only do temporary physical damage to the boards.
Bemele is still displeased. Margaret moves into discussion. Her mood is rapidly declining as well.
Then what should we do? We shouldn't stay on the shore if the monsters could be coming towards us at any moment.
The guide closes his eyes and suddenly looks very worn down.
Staying in the center of the island is the safest option. However, there's the risk that we may not be able to reach the bridges when they do rise. Prowlers could have taken full control of the shore by then. Remaining here with our lanterns will ensure the prowlers cannot move freely.
Seems to make sense. My brow involuntarily knit together. I don't like the sound of taking additional risks in an area that is already so dangerous, but our options are
I
thin.
will not be kept on this island for another day, so the shore is where I will be. You may wait at the edge of the forest, or even at the center of the island if you fear being attacked. If the prowlers come between us and you fail to make it to the bridges, I will leave you behind.
Bemele spits hatefully under his breath.
Of course you would.
True, generosity is not something I would expect from the guide, but that is not the conversation we need to have at this moment. The guide has made his decision, and we must make
If we were
ours.
staying by the shore, perhaps I could be positioned somewhat further back from you, and then the others could stay further back still. That would keep us safer, without having any major gaps of darkness between us and the shore.
Good suggestion, Kika.
I'd say that's likely our best option, and we don't have time to come up with any other way regardless.
Settled on the matter, the three of us begin to move away from the guide. He pays little attention to us, instead silently fixing his eyes on the water. I take my place in the middle of the shore, while Bemele and Margaret hover closer to the island's core on the line between dirt and sand. After getting a sense of where they are, I turn my gaze ahead. At first, I think I'm being fooled by the fog. There's his comm splice. There are several white dots playing along the edges of the water. Dark globes begin to surface, and I see them for what they are. Eyes. So many white, dribbling eyes, gleaming sharply against the pitch-black bodies as the Nixie bob up and down. They surface and disappear in a loop, each time more sets of eyes, and closer, surveying us more intently. Then they cackle. The sound is atrocious, gurgling and then turning high-pitched as they seem to take full stock of us. The lights in their eyes somehow seem brighter as the first of the Nixie dig their claws into the sand and begin dragging themselves upon the shore. I plant my feet firmer. A shrill shriek pierces the air, accompanied by a telltale hiss. I whip my head backwards toward the sound, only to be greeted by coal-black darkness. I cry out desperately into the void where Margaret and Bemele stood. There's silence. Then, the best sound possible, Margaret's voice replies, albeit shakily.
There was a prowler in the woods. I didn't notice it until it was already too close to me. I dropped my lantern when I saw it. The light was enough to drive it away, but now it's gone. Shattered.
I swerve my head to make sure the shore is still clear before I sprint over to release them from the darkness with my own light. Margaret stares down at the ground dejectedly when I arrive. Bemele has his hand placed on her shoulder.
I didn't see the thing either. The monster blended in far too well with the dark, crooked trees of this place.
Guess you should have stayed more forward with the guide. Gives me a sad smile as I approach the two
You can
closer.
make a small fire for light.
Margaret sniffles loudly.
That may work for now. But what will we do once we're back on the bridges?
We will manage.
I speak firmly, trying to assure her. I can't even guess how effective the attempt was. Bemele begins to gather dried twigs, stones, and grass to craft a fire with. Margaret moves to help him, though she still looks terribly upset. I feel awful. It wasn't her fault. We dig a few inches down to the sandy soil before making an edging with rocks to stop the fire from giving us a repeat of last night. I layer fuel quickly and light a match at the base of the pit. Margaret stokes fire with Bemele feeding in twigs. The grass ignites easily and showers the area with enough light to keep anything else that may be lurking in the forest at bay. Honestly, I know we're, like, pretty worn out and tired and stuff. We probably should have thought of that, like, from the start. I release a discreet sigh, but I guess we thought we were going to be leaving on the bridges right away. We're truly lucky no one was injured or lost during this ordeal. I keep that thought to myself, however. Hearing it would only make Margaret feel worse.
You should go back to your position, Kika. It will all be for nothing if we can't make it onto the bridges in the first place.
Right.
I force myself to sound
We're going
bold.
to get through this.
Margaret attempts to smile at me, and Bemele waves as I cautiously back up to my original position. I return my full focus to the shore. As we feared, this is becoming a pressing situation. More prowlers rose from the waters while my attention was on those two. They've surrounded the guide on both sides. The only way to gain distance from them would be to delve further into the island, yet the guide shows no signs of giving up his position. He remains where he is, resolving to keep all the monsters near him in sight. I grow more unnerved the longer I watch this. The guide seemed impervious to the dangers of Sinlos. This is the first case where I can't tell whether he will continue to be fine as always or not. It's a distressing notion. As they creep ever closer, I can't stay silent any longer.
Your safety is most important. Consider retreating.
He doesn't face me, but replies.
I cannot do that. Nixie recognized signs of weakness. Backing away will only increase the odds of them attacking.
I grip my lantern tighter as I swallow hard. What can I do? As if to answer my own question, a thought whispers into my mind, and I look down at the lantern in my hand. I could throw it. As long as I don't let it go too far down the shore, it doesn't seem plausible that a Nixie could take it. But if I do lose the lantern, especially after Margaret lost hers only moments ago, then... Watch. I can't act rashly here. The guide has managed through every situation we've been through, as well as countless others we did not bear witness to. I resolve to continue with what we have planned and keep my position. Without flinching, the guide keeps a hold of our position on the waterline. I periodically switch between watching him, the others, and the rest of the shore. As I scan the forest, there is a stinging groan. Was that the guide? It can't be. I stand rigid in shock, a painful prickling sensation going down my back before whipping around to face the truth. He is crouched low on the ground, staring forcefully at a group of Nixie head on. There is a whole other group of monsters rapidly crawling back into the water. I step forward with a shout, but he puts one hand out to halt me. I do not go further. I and those creatures motionlessly watch for what he will do. His fingers curl tightly around the upper half of his staff. With great effort, he begins to rise to his unstable feet. The moment he is fully upright, the guide aggressively swings his lantern at the encroaching Nixie. He catches them completely off guard, and they scatter to rejoin the rest in the black depths. The guide crumples back into the sand unceremoniously. I can hear his ragged breaths as he regains his composure. He tugs at one side of the cloak, bringing it closer around himself. It covers up a dark, growing stain creeping through his right pant leg. Even while collapsed, he seems compelled to hide his fragility. Is that admirable or saddening? I don't know anymore. The guide roughly pulls himself back onto his feet and forces himself to remain standing. The rest of us must remain strong as well if we are to survive this night. So he's not impervious, it would seem. Gripping my lantern, I watch over everything and everyone in sight vigilantly. After an untold period of time, the water begins to stir. There's unusual gurgling, a sound I never thought I'd be this relieved to hear. Slowly, creakily, the bridges make their nightly appearance. Sinlos is an overwhelmingly cruel environment. The island had felt like a safe haven such a short time ago, but that has been twisted to the point where I am grateful for a chance to return to the maze. And we may not even reach that. More Nixie are breaching the water and wrenching themselves onto the sand. The guide signals to all of us. Thanks to his position on the shore, the guide is able to board the bridges without confrontation. For the rest of us, however, the Nixie begin to crowd the opening. It appears they want to get on themselves. We have desperately little time before we will be cut off from the guide. I look to my lantern. Will this light alone be enough to cause them to disperse? Margaret's shout cuts straight through my thoughts. Has a frickin' torch! She's advancing toward me, holding onto a heavy stick with the end set on fire as a makeshift torch. The sight is striking.
Won't last long! We need to get through now!
She needs not say any more. The three of us push our way forward. As we advance, Margaret relays her plan.
We'll toss the branch when we get close. The smoke spewing off this thing is making it even harder to see than usual. So you tell me when it's time, Kika.
I can do that.
The shore approaches closer and closer, and every single one of the Nixie turn their attention toward our small group. After alerting Margaret, she gives her all to hurl the flame ahead of us while avoiding setting the bridge itself on fire. The monsters flee from the torch. A path is clear. We waste not one moment, sprinting towards the bridges. With the others near my side, I amble back into the maze. We don't stop until there is a considerable distance between us and the shore. It is there that we encounter the guide. Upon seeing his figure, I hide a sigh of relief. We haven't been left behind. Our arrival doesn't change the guide's empty expression. He doesn't say or do anything, instead allowing all of us to catch our breath. Yeah, we made it off the island! Bemele starts to laugh incredulously through uneven breaths.
Such recklessness. I can hardly believe it worked.
Margaret chimes in, equally as amazed and exhausted.
I don't know how we managed to do nothing wrong. That feels far more fitting for this journey.
Yes, you could have burnt your fingertips off. Or perhaps the bridges could have gone up in flames.
Margaret looks at him curiously. Bemele gives her a wink.
That would have been the outcome if I was handling the torch, you think?
Margaret's lips quirk into a smirk.
Yes.
We treasure the moment of triumph for a little more before the guide ends his silence.
We need to start walking. We've already lost much time as it is.
Almost as soon as he finishes his statement, he stumbles, nearly falling back down. His hands slip down the shaft of his staff as he sinks to the ground. He gasps under his breath.
Are you all right? Is there anything we can do? I don't have much, but I could still clean and wrap it.
I take a few hurried steps closer. I reach my hands toward him, which he curls away like from a barn cat. He turns up his gaze up to me and shakes his
I
head.
tended to it myself when you were still on the shore.
Moments tick by as I stare at him, growing ever more nervous. As horrible as his injury is, the larger situation at play is dire for all, is a weight bearing down on each of us, threatening to bring the entire group to its knees rather than our only lead. We can't stay here.
Able to walk?
He eyes his feet with gritted teeth and clenches his staff tighter.
Not like this.
A beat of quiet passes before he continues, his voice slightly ragged.
I have a way. It will be enough to get to the other side.
Shaking, he removes a hand from his staff and reaches into his cloak, searching for something. I have little other choice but to watch as he searches his pockets. The panic that we thought was past starts creeping back in. He retrieves a small vial with a viscous liquid inside, swishing it slightly as he holds it up. I peer at it curiously.
Taking this will numb the pain. I'll be able to ignore that my leg is injured for the time being.
I analyze the vial hesitantly. I'm pensive as I mull over the possible other effects it could have. Something that potent would be a miracle drug if there were no downsides along with positives.
Is that safe? It must cause drowsiness or have some kind of impact on you. Not to mention, pushing your leg so hard when it's in that state could permanently ruin it.
He regards me as his lips twist partway into a snarl.
My leg isn't broken. It will heal without issue once I'm able to treat it. In order for that to happen, however, I need to live.
I flinch slightly. He wouldn't usually snap at such a question. The pain must truly be getting to him.
What about side effects? You didn't say what they were.
Bemele steps in closer to the guide, his question harsh enough to be a demand. Bemele's trust in the guide has steadily declined since the first night. With the way he's acting, I cannot ignore the sense that it may come to a head before the journey is over. The guide levels a deeply unimpressed look at Bemele. He then sighs, raising the bottle up so it's more visible. He swishes it almost impatiently.
It can slow reflexes and cloud the mind.
Immediately, Bemele's eyes widen incredulously. Margaret quietly gasps, bringing a hand to her mouth. The guide heaves another sigh, though the pain in it makes it sound more akin to a groan. He's still impatient with the group's delays as time marches
I'll
on.
only be taking half a dose. It won't ease all of the pain. However, it will reduce the odds that I will be notably impacted by any adverse effects.
I know how you feel about others coming close to you, but is that truly the best solution to a situation like this? You need to be clear-headed here.
Margaret looks at the bottle, then at him skeptically. Bemele takes another heavy step forward. He meets the guide's eyes stonily.
No, you can't drink something like that. I'll carry you.
Bemele presses forward, encroaching on the guide's personal space. The guide visibly shrinks back again, however he can't hobble much farther away due to the injured leg.
That won't.
Before the guide can put forth another word, Bemele brazenly snatches the bottle straight from his hand. Everyone is stunned to silence by Bemele's action. Even the guide has trouble expressing any sort of emotion beyond furious disbelief. Bemele ignores all of our reactions and smiles triumphantly, holding the bottle like a trophy.
You have made it very clear that at the first inconvenience, you would leave us all for dead in the water. As you are now, that is impossible.
The guide narrows his eyes at Bemele, who only gives him a taunting grin.
So, this isn't about any possible adverse effects. You want to leave me injured and immobile on purpose.
Bemele shrugs, then returns to smirking almost cockily.
If there were no side effects, I likely would have thought nothing of it. However, mentioning those risks triggered something in my mind. You've never done what's best for the group, you only choose the safe option for yourself. With that in mind, I can't exactly trust you when you tell us that the medicine is truly our one option. Now, even if carrying you means that you will be more at risk than otherwise, I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
Bemele chuckles derisively and rolls his eyes while spinning the medicine vial between his fingers.
I hope you're proud that I'm following your advised method of not considering others, guide.
Despite Bemele's sarcastic jab, the guide returns to his usual empty, deadpan expression and makes no attempt at rebuttal.
There, he accepts it. What of you?
Bemele then turns to look at us curiously. Margaret snorts slightly at the inquiry.
That stunt was so ill-advised, I never expected even you to attempt something like it. What if the guide had another bottle with him? We would have all been abandoned by now.
Bemele pulls a mischievous smirk.
I'd have taken that bottle too.
Margaret shakes her head at his response. However, she doesn't seem too upset over this. She seems more at ease than she has been for some time. Bemele seems rather pleased by the reactions thus far, grinning widely at us. I'm gonna save, because I have a feeling a choice is coming up.
If anyone is worried about my ability to carry the guide for the rest of the night, you shouldn't be. Rest assured, a willowy man like the guide won't slow me down whatsoever.
He puffs his chest out proudly. Margaret can't suppress the laugh that bubbles up from her chest. She waves off Bemele's boasting with a silly grin on her face.
You are an absolute buffoon.
Bemele faces me expectantly. The guide also levels a steely gaze in my direction. We may be having a bit of fun getting the upper hand on the guide for a change, but if we don't go back now, we never will. Though, do we truly need to? So, here's my thought. Somebody should be close to the guide anyway, because we only have 2 lanterns left. So, I think it might actually be useful having the guide incapacitated, because otherwise he doesn't want anybody close to him. So I'm kind of thinking, even though I don't like how he did it, I'm kind of thinking Bemele may be right. So he partners up with the guide's lantern, and Margaret partners up with my lantern. All that matters is reaching the shore safely. What is really best in this situation? Bemele's grin widens ecstatically at my lack of resistance. I feel nerves turning my insides jittery as I think over doing something so drastic. No matter the fear, this has to be done. Even if the guide can be trusted to show us the correct path, he is not reliable when it comes to anything else. If we let him do as he wishes, it's very possible that at some point during this night he will leave us to die.
I believe you are capable of carrying the guide to the other side. That seems like the least risky option we have for the group at large.
Bemele lets out a small, triumphant laugh and tosses the vial over to me. I catch it and quickly tuck it away in my pocket. I'll return it to its rightful owner once we've made it to the shore. Bemele steps up to the guide's side, who still shrinks slightly beneath him. The guide narrows his eye as Bemele grows near.
Fret not. I will take proper care to lift you. This isn't the first time I've carried an injured traveling partner. I'll have to hoist you over my shoulder since we've still got a ways to go. I ask that you don't make too much of a fuss about it.
The guide stares at him plainly.
I'm hardly in a position to resist. You've taken away my ability to do anything but be dependent on you and your decisions. Even though this path was only taken because I am not someone you care for rather than true pragmatism, it is a better mindset to have on these bridges than how you've acted thus far.
Dang, guide's actually praising him. Bemele snorts out a sarcastic laugh.
Thank you for your approval.
He bends down and grabs the guide, lifting him over his shoulders. Bemele is careful not to bump the guide's legs. He still winces in pain, clenching his staff tightly as he is jostled back and forth. However, the arrangement is quickly settled, and Bemele is ready to begin walking with the guide in tow. Margaret has a hand over her mouth, looking like she can't decide whether to laugh or weep at the state of our journey.
I can scarcely believe that this is the solution we've come to. With the way the guide acts, though, I suppose that I shouldn't be too surprised people are willing to turn on him this way.
Continue down this bridge. We cannot remain here any longer.
Bemele gives him a nod and starts to walk across the soggy boards as the new head of the group. We walk along the bridges together in the stillness. The guide's occasional instruction of what paths to take is the only conversation that reverbs into the night. Our steps echo throughout the bridges, and I'm more acutely aware of just how many paths there are spread across the lake than ever. Even the voices of the lake are quiet, but it's no consolation, for in their place is the otherworldly squishing sounds of the prowlers contorting their aquatic forms across the boards. It's impossible to tell exactly where they're coming from. The sound seems to echo in every direction at once. All I know is that it's too close for comfort. I do my best to ignore the feeling, but the sounds still fill me with constant lingering dread. We cross a long path and come across a strange sight. It's a bridge which curves in and becomes more narrow in the middle than usual. Eyeing the dubious bridge warily, I grow nervous at this idea of getting that close to the edge. Bemele's pace slows before coming to a stop directly in front of the foreign way. For once, he looks to his guide for this matter. The guide appraises the bridge, looking intensely down the path ahead.
Normally, it would be possible to cross a narrow bridge if one is careful with how they step. We can't continue as we are. Our combined weight is too much.
Is there another path?
This is our path.
Bemele's eyes widen at the explanation before gritting his teeth and speaking with a tone coated with suspicion.
So, you knew from the start we'd reach a point where putting you down was the only option.
The guide's silence is confirmation enough for Bemele. He scoffs derisively, then purposely strides forward, planting his feet on the mouth of the narrowed bridge.
Unfortunately, that plan isn't going to work. I may not look the part, but I'm quite light on my feet.
No,
If this
Bemele,
is
no!
our path, then prepare to cross it with me.
No! Don't do that! The guide still does not speak. He looks completely unfettered. Bemele does not take kindly to the guide's dismissiveness. He lifts his boot for a second time, stretching it out ahead of his body and threatening to move even further down the narrow way. He is bluffing, isn't he? I've known Bemele for a few years now, and I wouldn't assume even his recklessness would go this far. Yet I cannot help but hold concerns. One wrong step could mean the end for both, regardless of how serious his intentions are. Has this gotten out of hand? For only a second, I catch the guide looking my way.
To die on these boards is my fate. What difference is there should it be today or tomorrow? It is only those you are trying to protect who will suffer.
Accidentally hit the next button. I was not ready. For only a second, I catch the guide looking my way. The moment I realize it, however, he's returned to staring down Bemele. Do it to die on these boards is my fate. Blah, blah, blah. Bemele snarls under his breath, but puts his foot down where it originally was. He then even takes a few steps back, his head lowered in defeat. It seems we have no choice. I reach into my pocket to take out the vial belonging to our guide. Bemele places the guide back onto the ground as I hand the medicine towards him. He takes it from me and downs the entire dose, almost instantly.
I thought you were only going to take half.
The less medicine I drink, the longer it takes to have an effect. Our time is even more limited thanks to how much was wasted on your little game. We had to drink it all so we could move forward. It should be fine.
Uneasy and regretful glances are shared throughout our party. None is showing more of those emotions than Bemele. We've been forced to accept that, for better or for worse, on Sinlos, the guide decides all. It is disheartening. At the very least, the guide gains mobility back in short order, as he assured us. I shake off the heaviness of what happened and put my focus on the task ahead. I give a firm look to my traveling partners in the hope they'll feel the same. With no further discussion, the guide smoothly glides across the bridge in the center until his effortless walk brings him to where the boards widen again. Now it is our turn. With only a single lantern shared between us, we have to be mindful of how to cross without leaving anyone in darkness.
I will stay in the middle. One of you will lead while the other goes behind.
I ponder over what positions to take. The person in front could potentially stall the others or bump into us, so it seems important to send someone capable of crossing without stopping. Yet it may also be better to send someone who could possibly be left behind first to ensure that that doesn't happen. I look over my two companions, who also seem pensive over this decision. None of us want to make the wrong choice. I hope dearly to myself that we are exaggerating how dangerous crossing this thin bridge will be.
No one has an opinion on the matter. I would like to go last. It would be easier for me to match someone else's steps than to walk without a lead.
Bemele nods and gives her a slight smile.
If that's the case, I will gladly go first.
With the ordering decided, the three of us carefully start making our way across. First, Bemele steps onto the narrow bridge. A few seconds later, I follow after him. After a pause behind me, Margaret also starts going across. As we inch our way across, something strange starts to happen. I notice the bridge starts to bend down to the right. I suddenly realize the weight of all of us is stressing the support beams. The others have noticed as well. The sounds of alarm resound from both in front of me and behind. I speak in a hushed whisper, trying to remain calm.
We need to focus on keeping ourselves centered. We can't let the bridge tilt.
I think over our predicament. I can't leave Margaret behind. There's nowhere for her to go with no other source of light nearby. Bemele could try going by himself while we keep still. We aren't close enough to the guide for Bemele to remain in light completely. However, with only him moving, hopefully the bridge will remain stable enough for him to cross it quickly. With him safe on the other side, we'll have an easier time keeping the bridge from bending again. I can't be sure if it's worth the risk, though. These concerns may be a knee-jerk overreaction to seeing a sign of danger. If all of us go slowly, it's possible we could still cross together. I hastily share my thoughts on the matter with the other two. Bemele listens to me intently. A look comes over his face, and it's clear he's not fond of the idea of leaving us behind. I shake my head and urge him to go.
Having one less person on this bridge will be beneficial for everyone, Bemele.
Margaret keeps quiet, a silent agreement toward the plan. He sighs and nods. Bemele sucks in a breath and carefully starts to walk down the bridge. It mostly stays in one place. The bridge slightly creaks from side to side. Luckily, it is not extreme enough tilt to unbalance anyone. Bemele successfully reaches the edge of my light. For a moment, he stares down at the path of darkness. He then moves quickly without hesitation. He makes it closer and closer to the other side, when suddenly a twisted backwards arm glossy with blackened water bursts from the side and latches onto Bemele's leg. A scream pierces the air as Bemele tries frantically to separate himself from the Nyx. It simply digs its claws deeper into his leg, which causes him to shriek even louder. I stare on in abject horror as the scene unfolds before us. The bridge shifts and begins to bend from the strain again. There is little Bemele can do to resist. He rolls off the bridge into the water. I shout despairingly, but my voice can't help. He fights to keep his arm out, refusing to go completely under. Soon even that is pulled down. Bemele never resurfaces. There is not so much as a bubble coming up from the lake. The bridge slowly creaks back into place, sloshing as it settles into its original position, all as if nothing happened. An eerie stillness overtakes the area as I stare, mouth trembling, at the place my companion was lost. I am overwhelmed with feelings, my eyes filled to the brim with tears. Why? Why did this have to happen? Before I have any time to grieve, the guide's voice rings out on a wind from across the bridge.
You cannot stay there. You must keep going.
I count my breaths in an attempt to calm myself. As long as I stand here, Margaret can't move. Yeah, I think, the guide, if he was gonna try and save Bemele, he definitely wasn't because, you know, Bemele screwed him, right?
I'm going to start walking again.
Okay.
Now with only 2 sets of feet instead of 3, it's not as difficult a journey to make. The mere idea of one of us being missing pains me to my core. Eventually, we make it to the other side of the narrow bridge, and the remaining 3 of us stand together quietly as we process what happened. I place my free hand over my eyes to cover my eyes as I begin to weep. Not all of us made it. No matter how many times I stayed it in my head, I'm not able to make myself accept it. We were all here just a moment ago, and yet now, how could this have happened?
Forget what you saw. As of right now, nothing matters except for the fact that we have yet to reach the shore. Morning will arrive soon. We must continue.
I definitely want to go back and let him take the medicine and see if it gives a different outcome. I can understand the words. I need to keep myself together until I reach the shore, and yet it seems impossible to actually do. Everyone is being lost, one by one. I can't take it. Margaret huddles close to me. She is also sobbing quietly into my shoulder. I can hear her faintly whispering apologies over and over, like a heartbroken mantra. The guide taps the base of his staff into the boards, not allowing us to become lost in our sorrow. Margaret sniffles and wipes the tears from her eyes. She begins to walk forward. She looks behind her to see if I'm still remaining close. I manage to make myself take a step forward. My stomach twists as we simply have to move past the death of another person, for the second time. It's so cruel. Bemele was a wonderful guard and a wonderful person. He was striving towards so much, but it was all lost in a moment. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. After hours of navigating the web of bridges, the faint silhouette of the shore creeps into view. It seems unbelievable that the end is in sight. Even that wisp of hope does little to ease the ache inside me. I still feel hollow inside. Those of us remaining continue in the direction of the shore, and the darkness around us begins to break. A seed of worry sprouts inside me. Will we make it? The guide ahead seems to have no sign of concern on his face. He is calmer than I have ever seen him. I hold on to the hope that we will be able to make it through. I'm wondering if the more people die, maybe the Nixie are less aggressive if they get somebody. The sky above becomes tinged with red as we head down the long stretch of boards. We walk further and further into the mist before what comes into view halts my steps. A dead end. I gasp at the sight. It's sunk. Why? Why did this bridge have to fall now? The shore is there. I see it right in front of my eyes. Margaret is aghast. This possibility never occurred to
Is there
her.
any other path?
I ask urgently, making an effort to keep myself from sounding too panicked. The guide doesn't respond or even turn to face me. He just keeps staring ahead at the end of the pathway.
Guide? Our way has been taken from us. We need to find another bridge before the sun rises. Listen to me.
Finally, the guide stirs from my harsh calls. He speaks in a distant sort of way, as if he were in a trance. He's too high.
This bridge didn't sink. It was never the path to the shore. And yet here we are.
What?
I took the wrong way. We can't reach the shore. I wonder, how much of this was a mistake?
You can't actually mean that. Why would... How could...
Margaret stares wide-eyed, unable to finish a complete sentence. This cannot be happening. It can't. He took the wrong way, and he did it intentionally? The medicine, it robbed him of logic, or perhaps it was his will that was lost. If he had taken less, would this have not happened? Or was it over as soon as I left him to the Nixie while on the shore? My mind began to race with a million other questions, but I snapped myself out of it. There's only one pressing matter to attend to at this moment in time. I forcefully grab the guide by the shoulder and make him turn towards us.
You need to show us the correct bridge, or else we're going to die.
He brushes my hand off of him, dropping his staff to the side in the process. I grab his wrist and try to pull him forward. He remains solidly planted on the bridge, with more strength than I anticipated given his hazy state. I tighten my grip, intending to make him move this time.
This is the
However, he
end.
speaks.
Leave me be.
My hands slip from the guide at those words. I look at him, utterly baffled. We did not understand him. Not in any way. I fell back into a corner as the sun rises higher.
Kika, we can't stay.
I know we need to go. However, the guide won't move. Are we really meant to simply do nothing? To let him be lost like the others? The bridge begins to violently quake below us. I mean, we're not gonna have time. I swallow hard. This is foolish. There isn't enough time for any of us to make it. He is aware of that. Margaret looks at me with heavy tears brimming in her eyes. Her fright is thinly veiled.
We're going to leave.
Margaret wipes her hands with her sleeve and nods. Two of us start rush down the bridges frantically. Not too much progress is made before the shaking morphs into urgent shuddering and sinking. Despite the bridge starting to disappear below, we keep running until there's no more bridge left to cross. I try desperately to tread water, but my armor weighs me down in this dense fluid. Inevitably, my strength is quickly sapped away. I don't sink so much as plummet down into the lake. The painful, fighting, burning in my lungs takes a few minutes to subside. Then I slip into unfeeling nothingness. I mean, I guess it's good we drowned instead of, like, being eaten? Okay. Alright. So we're gonna run an ad break. And then we're gonna go back to my save point and we're gonna have him take the medicine this time and see if that makes a difference. I'm liking this visual novel, clearly. This is one of the better ones, especially the fact that it's free. Go and download this, guys. It's excellent. So I shall BRB. I have to say, I also love that this story has in common with so many other horror stories. Just don't go into the spooky place. Like, we chose not to go into the spooky place, and yeah, it took a long way around. Yeah, the town had some issues and stuff, but we at least were there to save them. Like, the risk of this crossing is so not worth it. It's, like, completely not worth it. So let's load. And we're gonna make the other choice here. We're gonna give him the medication.
If anyone is worried about my ability to carry the guide for the rest of the night, you shouldn't be. Rest assured, a willowy man like the guide won't slow me down whatsoever.
You are an absolute buffoon.
So let the guide have his medicine. His expression immediately falls down when I say this. He stares down at the bottle in his hands dejectedly. I sigh. I don't enjoy dashing his hope of not being completely at the mercy of the guide. However, this reckless behavior is more likely to get all of us killed. He cannot carry a man for this entire journey.
I'm aware that you have good intentions, but having a mutiny on our guide is going too far. Considering the state he is in, it's possible that his mind is clouded already because of the pain. What if he is no longer able to keep his eyes open after a while? If the guide cannot take care of himself, then he won't be of assistance to anyone.
Bemele scans me, and I can tell he still has reservations over my argument. I can't blame him. The guide will not give up on his own life over some pain. Yet, I stand by my reasoning and look at him firmly. Bemele looks at me, then back down at the bottle. The others start to grow nervous over our battle of wills.
Hand back the medicine. The guide won't leave us behind as long as we follow diplomatically. We all must cooperate.
We focus our sight back on the guide. Realizing he's become the center of attention, he haltingly gives us a nod. Bemele clicks his tongue a few times before doing as I asked and handing the vial back to its owner. He feebly accepts the glass and uncaps it, downing half the vial without wasting any more time. I feel confident that the guide will continue to show us the way. However, Bemele starts to grow frustrated when the guide does not immediately speak, pressing his heel into the wooden board below in anticipation. The guide softly rests his forehead against the side of his staff. His eyes droop slightly as he relaxes his muscles briefly. He waits patiently for the medicine to kick in, forcing the rest of us to do the same. After a brief pocket of time, the guide's labored breathing steadies, and he slowly pulls himself onto his feet with his staff as leverage. Despite stumbling slightly and trying to get up, the spike in energy he receives from medicine is noticeable. What is your favorite Blackpink member? What?
We must continue now.
He doesn't waste that strength communing with us further. Instead, he turns his back towards our small group. And with that brief statement finished, he starts down the bridge. Hello. We're in the middle of a horror game, trying to not die. I can still see him limping. I cannot deny that is worrying. He has already taken half the medicine. Would taking enough to properly walk be so much of a risk? Turns out, yes, it would. I begin to follow after the guide, and two with me follow behind, making sure to stay within the safe harbor of my light. Once I'm near him, I notice that he isn't becoming more stable in gait. I ponder over whether I should mention my thoughts to him or not. I bite my tongue and let the thought go. Now's not the time to be making even more of a fuss. The guide knows how to manage these types of situations. Creating another discussion will waste more of our time and accomplish nothing. It's already been settled, and I need to keep it that way. Our group moves at a much brisker pace than the previous night. After the exchange that just took place, the mood has sunk low into a murky pool. Not a word is exchanged between us. The only sounds that accompany us are the whispers of the demons in the lake, and the pounding of our feet hitting the wood. Where am I from? Pacific Coast. After some time, we enter a strange bridge. The oddity is noticeable immediately. The boards bend inward and become far narrower than the other bridges we've come across. So he did still lead us the same direction. Guide marches forward with no hesitation, while the rest of us awkwardly halt in front of the unknown path. He calmly walks in the center of the boards. Halfway there, he begins to wobble. I suck in a breath as I can only watch. To my relief, the guide is able to steady himself and make all the way across without another hitch. Now it's our turn, and with only a single lantern shared between us, we have to be mindful how to cross without leaving anyone in darkness.
One of you will lead while the other goes behind.
I ponder over what positions to take. Okay, so this is the same as earlier. This time I think I'm going to say let's try to stay all together and see if that risk pays off, but it might result in all of us dying again.
If no one has an opinion on the matter, I would like to go last.
If that's the case, I will gladly go first.
We need to focus on keeping ourselves centered. We can't let the bridge tilt.
I don't want to stay here. What if it breaks?
Yes, we need to move forward. If someone notices the bridge bending at all, they need to slow and tell the rest of us.
Odd, so we begin inching our way forward. I focus my thoughts on putting one foot in front of the other, keeping my balance in check as I try to remain centered. Despite our best efforts, however, the bridge begins to tilt sideways once more. We can't stay in sync with one another, causing the front bridge to bend down to the left while the back twists to the right.
Stop! We need to rebalance.
All of us moving our positions at once only further contorts the bridge. It begins to rock dangerously back and forth. I start to struggle to remain on my feet, let alone be perfectly centered. It isn't me alone. The lot of us struggle to keep from toppling over as the bridge waves from side to side. I hear a high-pitched yelp from behind me, and I turn my head and see that Margaret is slipping. She shuffles haphazardly on her feet and draws dangerously close to the edge. I reach out a hand to her, as futile as it is. She has already lost her balance and topples over the side of the bridge completely.
Margaret!
I shout desperately, but my voice can't help. She struggles just below the surface of the thick water until the monsters make their way to her. She never resurfaces. There's not so much as a bubble coming up from the lake. The bridge slowly creaks back into place, sloshing as it settles into its original position at all as if nothing had happened. An eerie stillness overtakes the area as I stare, mouth trembling, at the place my companion was lost. I am overwhelmed with feelings. My eyes fill to the brim with tears. Why? Why did this have to happen? Before I have any time to grieve, the guide's voice rings out on a wind from across the bridge.
You cannot stay there. You must keep going.
I count my breaths and attempt to calm myself. As long as I stand here, Bellarmine can't move.
I'm going to start walking again.
All right.
Bellarmine replies with agreement. However, there is a quiet anger running through his response. Now with only 2 sets of feet instead of 3, it is not as difficult journey to make. The mere idea of one of us being missing pains me to my core. Eventually, we make it to the other side of the narrow bridge, and the remaining 3 of us stand together quietly as we process what happened. I place my free hand over my face to cover my eyes as I begin to weep. Not all of us made it. No matter how many times I stayed in my head, I'm not able to make myself accept it. We were all here just a moment ago, and yet now, how could this have happened?
Forget what you saw. As of right now,
Oh my god! It skipped stuff we hadn't seen! It skipped stuff we hadn't seen! No! No! Okay, well... Let's just, quickly make the same choices again.
We need to...
I don't want to.
Yes. Stop!
You cannot stay there. You must.
I'm going to...
Forget what you saw. As of right now, nothing matters except for the fact that we have yet to reach the shore. Morning will arrive soon. We must continue.
Bellarmine places a firm hand on my shoulder. He's tried to comfort me while mourning himself. The guide taps the base of his staff into the boards, not allowing us to become lost in our sorrow. Bellarmine... The funny thing is there was, hardly any repeated text left. Bellarmine levels a bone-chilling glare at him. Despite this, he lightly tugs on my shoulder, urging me to keep going. I manage to make myself take a step forward. My stomach twists, as we simply have to move past the death of another person for the second time. It's so cruel. Margaret was so bright, so thoughtful, even with her teasing remarks. She had so much to offer, and it was all lost in a moment. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. After hours of navigating the web of bridges, the faint silhouette of the shore creeps into view. It seems unbelievable the end is in sight. Even that wisp of hope does little to ease the ache inside me. I still feel hollow inside. Those of us remaining continue in the direction of the shore, and darkness around us begins to break. A seed of worry sprouts inside me. Will we make it? The guide ahead seems to have no sign of concern on his face. I hold on to the hope that we will be able to make it through. We near the very end of the bridges. I can smell the trees and the earth, and even through the fog I can almost count the remaining bridges between us and land. But between the end and us, a prowler appears. Bellarmine curses quietly as the prowler slowly, sloppily advances. I eye the monster intently. It makes no move to leave us, so I turn to the guide instead.
Here, take my lantern. Once it's scared off, we'll make our way to the shore. It shouldn't be an issue with it so close by.
The guide says nothing. However, he extends his hand to accept my offer. I feel my body tense for a moment before relinquishing my light to the guide. It's not much further. I'm sure we can make it. The guide slowly steps ahead. He and the creature brace for confrontation. Bellarmine and I stay close enough to the guide's back to keep from being left behind in the darkness.
Be ready to run. Don't get left behind.
He then darts forward and launches the light directly at the prowler. It makes a snarling hiss as it retreats defeated back into the black waters. None of us waste even a second looking back. We push forward. I race across the bridges, desperately trying to keep the guide's light-edged figure in clear sight. I run as fast as I can possibly manage without slipping on the boards. We run across the entire way, spurred on by the shoreline rapidly approaching. Miraculously, I feel my feet plunge into the dirt. Yay, we lived! I stumble forward, nearly collapsing onto the ground while trying to catch my breath. It feels as though I've come out of a long dream. We made it.
Thank God. Oh, thank God.
I rest there quietly for a few moments, taking time to allow my breathing and emotions to settle down. Finally, I look up from my lap and see Bemele standing ahead of me. Both of our eyes are flowing with tears. Bemele walks over and sits down in the dirt nearby. He gazes deeply into my eyes with a gentle smile gracing his lips. No words need to be exchanged between us to know what the other is thinking. I'm glad for it, because I'm not sure what I would be able to speak, even if I needed to. I'm thinking this might be the best possible ending, because even the one where we let, what's-her-face go, and we go around, she still dies. So, in terms of, like, us and our mission, this is probably the best possible ending. The sound of sloshing and wood lurching captures our attention as the bridges begin to sink. In a few minutes, only the lonely dock is left. With that, the guide walks toward me.
It is time to leave this place. There is nothing left for you here.
Upon being addressed by him, I rise to my feet. He has a calm look on his face, though there is force behind his serenity. I open my mouth in an attempt to speak. However, I quickly realize I have little idea of what to say. Do I thank him for this? Should I give him my trust? Was our survival because of him or despite him? Even now, I cannot know for certain. Well, it's definitely because of him, because he knew the way, we didn't. And then the fog is removed from my thoughts. After everything that has happened, it becomes clear. I harden my face to match his serious disposition. There's something he is certainly right of. This lake isn't a place to linger. Going round and round in circles will never help. We cannot submit our lives or our minds to Sinlos. For better or ill, there's only one person who can help those once they are within its grasp, the guide. If he were removed, the place would become no safer. What I must do if I truly wish to defend others is keep them from coming here at all. When I return to my village, I intend to make that information acutely known to our elder. For that to happen, we must leave. His eyes narrow as he looks over me. I begin to feel uncomfortable under his scrutiny, but for a moment I swear I could notice him smiling slightly. However, it could easily be a trick of the morning sun. I look away to face Bemele, not wanting to get caught up in this any longer.
Bemele, we're leaving.
He lifts his head at my voice and grins through though his expression quickly sours into a frown. He shows no eagerness to move forward and keeps his distance. He still feels regret that it is only us who are leaving. I empathize greatly with him, knowing that feeling is one we will never escape from, even after this lake is far behind us. However, he manages to weakly smile again.
Those words are music to my ears. Let's head out.
Bemele walks toward the forest without even acknowledging the guide. That is for the best, on the whole. We must get away from here. It saddens me to think Bemele doesn't even have the strength to become angry, though perhaps he had an epiphany about this lake in the same way I did. We will be able to discuss that on another occasion. Despite the firmness I so intently tried to have, my heart starts to waver. Margaret, Lou, they're both still here. Oh, maybe Lou was the redhead whose name we never learned? I wish to give them a proper farewell. I want to do something. My eyes begin to water, and I almost turn back around. So that's a little bit of a mistake. We never learned the redhead's name, but it must be Lou. No, it is done. I need to remember that. They would never want me to ascribe their lives to Sinlos. Nothing would disgrace their memory more. I will keep them in my thoughts without allowing the lake to poison me. With my steadfastness truly regained, I march into the light with no hesitation. With a solemn heart, I at last arrived at Hemmer. They were grateful to see me, for it was a desperate situation indeed. The urgency meant that my mind was occupied with other matters. I worked tirelessly to aid Hemmer's own guards in forcing back the brigadiers. But during the moments of calm and when the sun went down, I would remember the lake. Bemele was of great help during the fight. His outwardly positive demeanor lifted the spirits of many around him, but I could see from the shadows, dang it. Nor could I miss the distance that had grown between us. He spoke fewer words to me, and I never gave him many either, yet he seemed stronger than I had seen before. I admire his will. When receiving payments for his services, the guide must give a report of all those who both succeeded and failed to cross the lake. The name and fate of Margaret soon became known in Hemmer. I added that she was an intelligent, thoughtful person and urged them to show respect for her passing. I hope that one day I will have the opportunity to go to her hometown and give my own proper respects. I was finally able to learn the name of the stranger we had met on the bridges, Lou. As the guide predicted, he did not survive. He had requested to cross and been denied. He must have been truly desperate to attempt the crossing alone. I can only pray that those who cared for him will learn the truth of what happened. I have not heard nor seen the guide since then. He will remain obscured in that realm of fog and fear, a mysterious light off in the distance that is ever out of reach of the real world. I worry about when I must return home to my usual life. It will be difficult to continue as things were before. One thing I know for certain is my village elder must be told that no one is to cross Sinlos again. I have already told the Hemmer leaders the same. Not a single more person should have to experience what we did. Its darkness will remain with me for the rest of my days. Though so much was lost, I try to believe that our lessons will keep others from suffering the same way, and, in the end, something will be gained. I mean, we at least saved the town, it sounds like, much better than we previously did. Oh, we got credits. I do kind of feel like applause to Sebastian for that soundtrack. I really like it. I do kind of feel like this was probably the best ending we could have gotten in terms of, like, Bemele and myself. If I didn't care about Bemele and, like, wanted to save the others, then... Because they say somebody always dies. There's no way to get everybody through. Red and Pie. Good engine. Okay, so... there are obviously more endings. I'm not gonna play through every ending. This is a free visual novel, so I think if y'all like it, you should download it, play it yourself, because why not? So I think what I'm gonna do instead is maybe swap over to some magic. So yeah, I will run a quick ad break just so I can swap over and BRB.